Website.
We good?
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful, yeah. Great.
So this trilogy of Clemson and Alabama,
Yeah.
do you think that in 20, 30 years that we're going to look at this and there's going to be an ESPN 30 for 30 of one of the
I
greatest
do.
series?
Yeah. In fact, I think when you look at the annals of trilogies in the modern sports era, there's one that stands out as the all-time greatest, and that's Ali Frazier. But what was so unique about Ali Frazier and why it stands the test of time and why it's a far better sports trilogy than anything that, say, Celtics Lakers did or more modern NBA or NFL trilogies did is the parallels of one team wins one way and they had certain personality traits and characteristics, much the way Joe Frazier would be like Alabama, and then one team wins the next way, the way brash and bold and Ali and fun-loving, the way Clemson and Dabo win, and now you get the rubber match. And I think that the personalities of both coaches, the fact that you have the establishment and the grand tradition of Alabama, and then the new rich, the new money of Clemson on the upswing, makes it so dynamic. And then the fact that the college football playoff era just got underway. So at the same time that the trilogy is taking place, it aligns with this great birth of the college football playoff. And I think it is going to be something that we reflect on 20, 30 years from now and say that era of college football, when Bama and Clemson ruled everything in the college football playoff, was ascendant. Yeah, I do. I could see a 30 for 30. I should produce that.
You should produce that. So, I mean, if Clemson were to win, do you think that they become the gold standard and kind of take Bama's place at this point?
I think there's a very good argument to be made. And I think that in a lot of ways right now, listen, Clemson has great football tradition going, back 100 years. And listen, the series goes back 100 years. They started playing in 1900. Right. And Clemson is a team that has won a national championship and has had all-time great players. But this recent run of Clemson football, in a time when many of us were doubting if anybody can really be what Alabama has been as a program, it has to be recognized. It has to be acknowledged. They're doing it in a slightly different way, a different approach. But if you look at recruiting and you look at the commitment university-wide to facilities, to infrastructure, to understanding what it takes to be all in, and I hate to use the quote of their own program, but that's really what it is from top to bottom. It runs parallel to the same exact stuff that was put forth in 2007 in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, of here's what it's going to take, here's the level of commitment from the entire university all the way down to trainers and equipment managers. And yes, I do think that there's an argument to be made. I'm not saying they're usurping them, but I'm saying you can say that these are the two programs that now are defining where the sport is.
Turning our attention to the game, where do you see the differences in these two teams?
There aren't a lot of differences in these two teams. That's what I think. In certain ways, they're mirror images of each other. You have quarterbacks who have similar skill sets, right? Similar levels of athleticism. Downfield passing is not what they want to be, not what they do best. The ball is put at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage or just beyond the line of scrimmage. You have speedy athletes on the perimeter, but yet it's the run game and the commitment to the run game, both with the quarterback run game and with the RPO stuff that both teams want to stay true to. You have front sevens on both teams that are really the pillars of what that defense stands on. I do think the front four, the defensive line of Clemson as individuals, is as good as there is a unit group in the country. And then I think you have similarities, with the exception, I would say, of punter among the special teams. So I think they're mirror images of each other. And the fact that if you took the last 2 years, the aggregate score is 76 to 75. There's a 1 point differential over 2 years. I also think both teams aren't quite as good or dynamic as they were just a year ago. Clemson, especially with the downfield passing game and some of the weaponry that's now not there. We obviously know number 4 is not there, but there's also some guys on the perimeter and an outstanding tight end that's not there anymore. And Alabama, in terms of edge rushers on defense and a star defensive end, no longer there anymore. So I think both teams are slightly lesser versions than they were a year ago, but in doing that, they're equally as comparable as they've been the last 2 years.
The last two have been kind of high-scoring shootout type games. Do you see this one playing out as kind of a low-scoring?
Yeah, more so.
Yes. Maybe in the 20s.
Would be, a specious argument to say, oh, it's Clemson, Alabama again. It's going to be 45 to 40 or 35-31. I think because of what we just described with the matchup and understanding what both teams are and what both teams aren't, you're talking about a one-possession game that is played in the 20s rather than what we saw year one in the
Right.
40s or year two in the mid-30s, yes.
If Clemson is to win, the X factor will be who or what?
If Clemson is to win, the X factor will be that Kelly Bryant was a good enough passer down the field to win the game.
Same question for Bama.
If Bama is to win the game, it's because Jalen Hurts was able to convert third and mediums and third and longs and was a good passer down the field, whether that's Calvin Ridley or whether it's one of the freshman receivers, whether it's Smith, Ruggs, or Judy doing something downfield.